But the thing is, in life, it's always true. You have to make the room to find out what's going to fill it. You don't know what's going to fill your void until you allow the space. Welcome to the Ignited Recovery Podcast, a new way forward for anyone looking for answers but feeling left out. If you've been searching for empowerment, triumph, and purpose, you've found them right here. You won't hear the same solutions, and you're not going to have any excuses to fall back on, because Ignited Recovery allows heroes to rise and become their best selves. I'm Dr. Sophie Jaffe, and I can't wait to be your guide on this journey. Are you ready to become an ignited hero? I used to have no space in my existence, like just no room to breathe pretty much. And I cleared it up, and then repeatedly this keeps happening. Well, here's the beautiful thing about life that not that many people decide to tell you. Maybe it's because they're scared of, we'll all sit around on the couch and not want to do anything, but life is like a constant recycling, reformulating, refiguring out what you're doing act. And when it comes to just keeping your head above water, I want to break it down for you like this. First, in every one of these kind of remetamorphosis experiences, you figure out that you need to, and then you clear out space in your life. So like if we go way back in my history, when I was in the middle of using and selling, drug use, getting drugs, selling drugs, counting the money from the drugs, figuring out what to do with it to get more drugs, using more drugs, over and over, like that world took up almost all the space I had. I don't know if I've ever told this story on here, but I had security cameras in my studio and outside of it because I got held up at gunpoint and robbed. And so I got these cameras everywhere. Like each room had 2 cameras in it. And then the doors, which there were 2 of them to my studio, had cameras above it too. And I would find myself in that, like, you remember, anybody see Scarface? And you remember that scene where you're just sitting there and just looking at all the video cameras of people coming in to kill him? There weren't as many people coming in to kill me, but I was constantly looking at the video and just doing drugs, just using and doing drugs. When I found the videos later after I was done, I watched them because it was there was curiosity 2, 3, 4 years after I was done. And all I did was sit around and use. And then people would come in and buy drugs and I would use with them and then they would go away. And when I would keep using, that's it. I had no space for anything else in my life. Now, I already told the story of my recovery and rehab and relapsing, etc. But as I started using less drugs and I cleared the space, like I changed the phone number I had, I got rid of a lot of my friends, not all of them, but a lot of my friends, there was space. Now, when you first do the clearing up of the space, when you get room to breathe, it's not always clear what's going to fill that up. Like at the time, when I was done with rehab, when I was done with jail, when I was done with drug use, I didn't know what that space would get filled in with. I didn't know what it would grow into. But the thing is, in life, it's always true. You have to make the room to find out what's going to fill it. You don't know what's going to fill your void until you allow the space. So once I allowed the space, new opportunities showed up. Now, if you remember from some of the past stories, I thought what was going to fill up the space was I was going to go get a job. And so I tried for 6, 9 months. I applied to everything that I could. I didn't get work. Again, you don't necessarily know what's going to fill up the space until it's there. For me, what started filling up the space was school. Again, the interesting thing is I swore off of school. I said when I graduated undergrad and got my bachelor's, I said I'm never setting foot in school again. But once my life got filled up and I cleared space again, I ended up just finding my way back into graduate school. And graduate school filled up a lot of space. I was really motivated. I also had nothing else to do. So kind of like in a vacuum, the school just kind of went in and took up as many hours as it could. And a lot of the free space in my life got filled in by school. Then I got in a relationship that filled up more space. Then I got married. Almost all the space got taken up between school, the beginning of us having kids, and just my new normal. Now, the interesting thing is my new normal looked absolutely nothing like my old life, but here I was finding myself again full to the brim. I had Sophie, I had the kids. I was working at the time 70, 80-hour weeks. I was barely keeping my head above water. And Sophie and I, we would take these walks around the block and just try to figure out what to do. And Sophie would keep trying to tell me, you got to clear up space. And I resisted it like crazy because if you're like me, you find yourself anchored and holding on to the way life looks right now you can't imagine it looking freer, emptier. And we would take around just these blocks with, Kai in the stroller and then Kai and Leo, and just kind of say to myself, like, this is just not working out. We're not spending time together, whatever. Life was full. I'm barely breathing. Because the thing is, again, when you're in your new normal, you don't realize you found yourself in the same space again. That's where the recycling keeps coming in. After about 6-7 months of these conversations with Sophie, it became very clear that it's time to recycle. It's time to throw out the trash. It's time to get myself some space. So we did that. And the way we did it at the time was I had to quit some jobs, which was really difficult. I had to sit down with Sophie and have a real conversation about, hey, these jobs bring in money that supports us. Here's what I need you to be able to start bringing in so I can empty out some space. So if you notice, I'm clearing out space and Sophie is filling up. We also discovered that, not unbeknownst to me, it sounds bizarre to say that I didn't know what I was doing, but I was also filling up a lot of space in my life with these inappropriate relationships and chats and online relationships with other women around the world, around the country. I literally hadn't realized until our relationship almost fell apart, how much of my headspace and literally my time was filled up with either covering it up or acting out in that way. So that got taken out. And just like what happened last time, I couldn't have fathomed what would have happened when I released about 20, 25 hours of work out of my life and cleared away all these intrigue and all these inappropriate relationships. But what ended up happening is I had, for the first time in years at that point, because it was 6-7 years since the last clearing out, I had time to sit and think to myself, what do I want? And if you're like me, and you're listening to this right now, you haven't had the time to think to yourself, what do I want in life, in a really, really long time. And the reason you haven't had the opportunity is because your life is so full, because you're barely keeping up. Because from the moment you wake up in the morning until the moment you fall asleep, you're stretched to the limit. Well, guess what? The space I had, the time I had to refigure out what I wanted to do, I figured out I wanted to start a new business. Something called Ignited, and a podcast that goes along with it. And so the clearing out of that space is the thing that allowed what we're doing right now in this moment while you're listening to happen. It's kind of like a little inception moment for us. And I got to say, in the 2 years since that's happened, since that all that space got cleared up and I found myself doing this work, it's incredible what has shown up in my life. The number of emails, the number of amazing messages we get from you guys about the impact it's made. And so true to form, it was time to elevate and work and fill the space back up. And what's filling the space up is like a dream if you think about it. I have a company that has the most impact I've ever had in my life. I have a wife and a relationship that is showing up in a way I never thought anybody would show up for me and in our coupleship ever before. And so I can already tell, maybe it's not going to take 3 or 4 years before having to do the next recycling, but I already know because I look back, and this is what I love doing in my life. I look back and I say, every time that I've done this, every time that I've ended up in a place where I recognize that I'm filled up and it's time to do a clearing, it's time to do like a spring cleaning of my life, what ends up happening is the space gets filled in with more opportunities, more dreams, more successes than I could have even imagined. Thank you for tuning in to the Ignited Heroes Recovery Podcast. I really hope you found the information here useful and that we'll see you back here next week. And look, I want to make sure that this podcast is the most useful it can be for you, so please let me know by emailing info@ignited.com if there are any specific topics or questions you'd like to have addressed. As usual, if you like this episode, I would love for you to leave us a 5-star review and rating. Thanks, and see you next week.